Welcome to the Generation Kids Daily Devo podcast, where we move from wonder to worship, looking for God at work in the world around us, ready to ask the tough questions and discover what His Word has to say to us. Today's episode is titled Naval Gazing Eww, and it comes from me, Casey Taylor. Welcome back to a brand new week of the Daily Devo podcast. This week, we have a new and exciting theme that we'll be looking at. Wait, is exciting the word? Maybe more like excellent opportunity for us to live like Jesus did.
Excellent.
Because this week's theme is humility. One of my favorite writers and the guy who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, a man named C.S. Lewis, once said about humility that humility isn't thinking less of yourself, but instead thinking less about yourself. Now, for those of you who have spent any time on social media or streaming platforms or YouTube, you'll know that the time that you live in is really full of people trying to get your attention and keep it.
Look at me.
They want you to focus on them nonstop. They play games where people win money just to get you to keep paying attention to them, and maybe even offer you the hope that somehow in one of their streams, posts, or videos, you could win something or interact with this famous internet personality.
Cool.
We live in a culture where each person is their own brand or product to be consumed and purchased or subscribed to. So the me that each person puts out into the world isn't trying to do what Paul encouraged the early church to do when he wrote his letter to the church in Philippi, while also probably sitting in a prison cell, precisely because he was sharing the good news with others like you and me.
Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more important than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but to the interests of others. Philippians 2:3-4.
Have you ever heard the term navel gazing? If you have or haven't, to fully understand it, you need to know that your navel is your belly button, and to gaze is to stare at. So to navel gaze means to stare at your belly button. And the expression to navel gaze means to just basically stare at yourself and focus only on yourself. It's another way to say that you just look out for you and only think about what works for you. This is the exact opposite of the life that Christ calls us to, and the opposite of the charge from Paul in today's passage. He doesn't say don't do everything from selfish ambition. He says to do nothing from selfish ambition. This means not getting as many pizza slices as you want, because there are other people who might want some pizza too, and you make sure that they get some before you get all that you want. It may even mean letting them go first and choose to accept whatever is left. It means sitting in the back seat, even though you hate it and it's cramped, because your brother or sister needs to sit in the front seat because they get motion sickness in the back seat. Or it might mean spending money that you earned on someone who doesn't have as much as you do, and giving up all that you could have so that someone else might get a little. Or it might even look like taking a beating for a crime you didn't commit, having nails driven through your hands and feet and into a wooden cross, and then hung from it to pay the penalty in place of people who didn't deserve to be let off the hook. Because humility in God's image looks like sacrifice and suffering for the benefit of others. Obviously, this last example is Jesus, and we all know from reading the Bible that He was perfect. He made no mistakes, and He never sinned during His life. He was well within His rights to let us pay the penalty for our own sins, because they weren't His. But He so loved and valued us and desired that His righteousness would become a covering for us, washing away our sins, that He took the pain, the agony and death that we deserved, so that He might share in the life that He had to offer with us. Only He could have offered us that life, and He sacrificed greatly to extend that offer to us. Paul is telling us not to look at our own interests while we live our own lives here on earth, but to consider instead the interest of those around us, that we might live like Jesus lived, that others might see the way that we have been loved by Jesus through the way that we show others that same love. When we lower ourselves from being the most important person in the room to being the person most called to be a blessing and to sacrifice for others so that others might be blessed, we are walking in what the Bible calls humility and are fully embracing the life Jesus and Paul here in Philippians 2 ask us to live. So today, don't think less of yourself as if you aren't important. Jesus dying for your salvation surely shows that you are important. But today, Try thinking less about what's good for you or what's best for you as it relates to others. And in humility, look for ways to make others feel like Jesus has made you feel, undeserved but worth the sacrifice. Now it's time for
Today's Big Question!
Today's big question is, what's a situation that you can remember where you look back and realize that your overexcitement for something good for you wound up being bad news for someone else? One too many pieces of pizza? You eat all the ice cream before everyone else got some? Whatever it is, ask God to remind you next time to be someone who thinks about yourself less, and in humility, let others get their fill first, and trust God with what's left over. Maybe even plan a time for you to be a blessing to someone who you know doesn't have as much as you do. And in blessing them, you'll get to show love the way that Jesus did, in humility and overflowing in generosity. Thanks for listening to the Generation Kids Daily Devo podcast. If you want to keep in touch with us on all our social media platforms, check out the links in the description. And if you'd like to help support us as we continue to create meaningful content for kids of all generations, please subscribe to our Patreon by visiting us at patreon.com/wearegenerationkids.